Hello and welcome to the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast, episode 163. Hi there, this is Brent Berger. I'm your host for the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm thrilled to be talking about this topic that we have here, sunrise over Mount Newhall, Unalaska Island. It is my print of the month for December 2023. As you know, I'm doing these monthly print releases where I'm looking at either going out and grabbing a new image or possibly looking at my library of images. And thus far, somewhat, I've done a little bit of my library of images. I've done a little bit of new imagery for, going out and specifically grabbing an image. This particular image comes to us from Unalaska Island, and I'm going to tell you the story about it. I'm going to tell you the background behind it, the design elements, why I like this image, why it moves me, and why I just think it works, why it's a successful image. But Unalaska Island was such a great place, and you can kind of see why I think you're in just the light and just the overall sheer magnitude of the place. I was a little bit surprised, I guess we can say that, a little bit surprised by the idea of how the mountains just kept going. And when you think of the Aleutian Islands up in Alaska, for me anyway, I sort of think of these little islands. I mean, it's a very long chain, but I just kind of think of these little islands, these little rocks that stick out of the ocean, stick out of the Bering Sea, out of the Northern Pacific Ocean. And here we have, this is the first major island in the Aleutian chain. And it's just going on and on and on with mountains, it seems. Now, this is the limit. You see, 2 or 3 or 4 layers there. And so this is the limit of those mountains from this direction. But anyway, it was just a little bit of an eye-opener, I guess, is the main idea of what we're looking at there. The background story, the whole idea behind this image, how did it come about? Well, this is way back in December 2019, a glorious time before we knew what COVID was. And anyway, I probably shouldn't even mentioned that, shouldn't even gone there. But I was looking, I was kind of itching like normally happens, and looking for a place to go. And I've been wanting to go to the Aleutian Islands, in particular Adak Island. I really would love an opportunity to get out there. But thus far, it's just eluding me. In part, well, I guess the costs and the logistics and stuff, of course. But that is just way out there. So I figured I would rather do something that was a little closer in and a little more developed and a little more developed as a tourist traffic or just industry traffic. So there's huge amounts of fishing going on in Unalaska Island. Dutch Harbor is the name of the town there, the major name of the town there. And so I decided I had enough Alaska Air Miles. I was going to use some Air Miles and make it happen. And so at the time that I reserved these Air Miles, it wasn't that expensive. I forget exactly what it was, but it was I remember it being fairly affordable. Now, Alaska themselves do not fly there. They had a partner airline that they were working with. But in the time that I reserved the flight and the time that I flew there was an accident. An airplane went off the runway, and the airline that went off the runway was the one that was contracted with Alaska Airlines for supplying these Air Miles trips. Well, that relationship somehow got severed, in part, I think, because that airline ended up getting shut down. And so there was a little bit of time where I just wasn't sure, is this trip even still going to happen? Well, another airline stepped in, started covering those routes, and also honored the existing Alaska Air Miles reservations that were there, but they weren't taking any new Air Miles reservations. So I was like, okay, they're letting it still happen. I'm still going to count on it. And it was amazing. I loved it. Everything went without a hitch. It was beautiful. It was perfect. But I also put out a call before all that happened. I also put out a call to the listeners, and I was just like, hey, is there anyone who's interested in sharing expenses? This is really expensive. All I want to do is just split the cost with you. There's an Airbnb, there's a rental car. These are the major costs we have to concern ourselves with. On the island, there is a Safeway grocery store, so there was an opportunity to get an easy source of groceries, so that was nice. And so a fellow named Randy, he's out of roughly the Seattle area, he responded, and didn't know him from Adam, and it worked out really well, though. He was a wonderful companion to shoot this with, and I'm thrilled to have gotten to know Randy. And we actually went on another shoot, what was it, a year or two later in northern Idaho, central Idaho, somewhere in there. So that was pretty cool, too. But anywho, so we were just tooling around the island and having a grand old time photographing for almost a week. And yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. So our first hike, though, I've got a map here. If you're watching on the YouTube video, I've got a map showing. If you are listening in the audio only land, you'll need to hop into the Facebook group or onto my website where you can see the slide deck as we're going through these items, or just review them afterwards. But you'll be able to see then a map of the northern portion of Unalaska Island. And the first hike we went up was a little place called Mount Ballyhoo. Now, as we're looking at this map, if you were to type it in, probably better to go ahead and just type in Dutch Harbor if you're going to do your own search. Mount Ballyhoo is right in the middle of Unalaska Bay. And this island is called, the little island that Mount Ballyhoo is on is called Amakanak Island. And so you climb up Mount Ballyhoo. It's a really steep climb. And then when we were looking mostly south, but also a little bit east, so this was sunrise, we're very far north. And so this makes a whole lot of sense, of course, with the direction that we're facing. But also it was in the neighborhood of about 11 o'clock in the morning. So the sun rose in the neighborhood of 8:30 to 9 a.m. And then the sun was up pretty high already by roughly 11 or so when this shot was made. And it was such a tough climb that I just had to leave the backpack. I don't know if I was just not in good shape. Now I wasn't feeling very well. In fact, that night I got kind of sick. Now I know why I got sick. It had nothing to do with anything of a normal illness. It turned out that I'm allergic to certain things. I ate some of those things the day before and it was finally hitting me. And now I know, but at the time it was just like, what's going on? So I had to leave my backpack halfway up the mountain and just continued up. Got to the crest of the mountain and was looking at various compositions all around. You have 360-degree view. But this shot still wasn't from the very top of the mountain. I was still on the side of the mountain a little bit of Mount Ballyhoo. And incidentally, on the other side of Mount Ballyhoo, there's this army base from World War II. That was also amazing. That is so cool. So many good memories from Unalaska Island. But anyway, the light just suddenly kind of came alive. I mean, it was kind of cool already and things were looking good. And those clouds are just moving through. There's a lot of movement up there. And with those clouds, it's not like they're just gently kind of going by. You had to have a fairly fast shutter speed to make sure that they were frozen, if that's what you were going for anyway. So the light just, after a while, it just started to really come alive to the southeast. I should say southeast really. And just became really brilliant. And then as the clouds are moving through, you get a little more concentration here, a little more concentration there as the sun is beaten through. And it just turned out really cool. I got several shots, and the shot that we have here is one of those shots that just really resonated with me, and how it just really came together. It really ended up telling the story of what I was hoping to get across, the idea of the majesty of the mountains, the majesty of the light, the incredible nature of this very much treeless landscape. There's no trees, at least in the wilderness area. There's no trees in the Aleutians, and it's all this tundra, these grasses and things like that. And so this, with the layering happening and such, this just really came together and just really said in one shot, this became the quintessential, this is what it's about kind of an idea. So let's talk a little bit about the design and composition of this image. Why does this image work? Let's break it down. Let's kind of deconstruct this image just a little bit and kind of go into why I think it works. Now, I think you know what I'm getting across here too, and this whole idea of design and composition, design and creativity is my course that I offer, but it's also just something I like to separate myself from those expectations of the rules of photography. The way I view that is anyway, maybe it's just me and I'm an old fuddy-duddy and I'm caught in a certain way, but I want to release myself from the expectations of what I need to be doing, what the expectations are from an external point, and have my expectations delivered from within. And hopefully I can meet my own expectations that I'm looking for. And when I'm doing that, what I'm really looking for is I'm looking to take what the subject, what the scene is giving me, and then coming up with something that is a solution that communicates my purpose, that communicates my point, communicates everything about what's important here. And it starts out with a light and color. So in this image, I think we're going to go mostly, I think, in order of importance, the order that I view the importance in anyway. And that is the light and color, the warmth of the sun coming through, the coolness of the surrounding areas. Now, when we get into the post-production, we're going to kind of see a few of the things I did to help, we'll call optimize or accentuate those ideals. But the light and color, I think, is the primary ideal here, the primary idea that is happening very strongly. And with this little, what we're going to call a concentration, I guess, of warm colors in this generally centralized area, it really gives you that sense of warmth, that sense of comfort, that sense of something that is maybe relaxing a little bit, but then it's hugely contrasted. I don't even have contrast listed as a design element here. Maybe that should be one of the first items, but contrast is high. It's not the driving factor that I was thinking about when I was making this image, and I still don't think it's a driving factor, but it is a benefit. It is a side result or a side product of just what we have available to us, what was given to me, well, and Randy, he was there too, obviously, what was made available to us in making our images there. Contrast, again, it just wasn't something that stuck out at me as that says this image is successful because of the specific idea of contrast, but contrast definitely comes into a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here. Light and color. We got the contrasts of light and dark. We have the contrasts of warm and cool colors. There's lots of things that really wrap and suck me into this image because of those warm, comfortable colors. But then we think too about the lines and the shapes. Most notably, we're thinking about the mountain shapes, the mountain lines, the lines that define the ridge of the mountain, the lines that define the edges of the clouds. We have some very defined elements of the clouds. This is also, when we get to the clouds, especially where we get a sense of texture coming through. But let's not forget the contrasting texture of the tundra and the snow and how those elements are being interpreted as well. And then we have the design principle of layering and transparency. And I'm thinking about, as I'm setting up the shot, how can I get to myself to a point of view? How can I record this in a fashion that showcases the depth of the mountains, the breadth of the mountains, and the ideal of what this whole environment is about? And this notion of layering really helps to build that in. And then the transparency, that's where I'm thinking about how the moisture in the air is causing greater and greater density the further you go back in space, from you as the camera position. The further you go away, the more ill-defined, I guess I can put it, the less defined the mountains become the further back you get. But also notice it's split about in half horizontally and almost split in half vertically speaking. So I've completely ignored the rule of thirds. It didn't even enter my thinking when I was creating this image. I was all about these ideals of this design and composition, this design and creativity. How can I use these tools that nature is giving me, these tools that God has given me to compose something, to limit what is in my frame so I can compose something and create my own commentary on it based on what I'm seeing before me and what I'm trying to communicate after that. All right, let's jump into Lightroom and actually take a look now at what's going on in Lightroom with these specific settings. And we'll talk about these items as we are jumping into Lightroom now. Okay, here we are in Lightroom, and let's head on over to the Develop module. And when we are looking at this image, we can see we've got a few items over here in the basic, well, quite a few items in the basic panel that we want to look at. And with the temperature, brought it a little bit more leaning towards the cool side. There was a lot of warm hues, of course, coming through, and I just wanted to balance that out just a touch. But then on the tint, brought back in some of those magentas from green to magenta. I went to a plus 25, so I was able to keep some of those rich ideals of the warmth coming through. But as you can see in this kind of image, I mean, let's face it, there's not that much magenta, not that much green anyway. So this slider really didn't have that much of a pull on things. It was just helping to also keep those clouds from going a little extra too green. Now on the exposure slider, I didn't touch it. It is a zero compensation on the exposure, but my contrast, I pumped that up to a plus 63. So we've got a lot of that extra contrast coming in. The contrast is going to help really weigh down those shadow areas and really lift up those bright tonal areas. So that just means the contrast is really stretched out and that this image would be a little bit on the flatter side. It would look a little bit flatter if we just didn't have that contrast adjustment. Here I can double click this to reset it to 0. We can see it just starts to, go flat. And I liked that 63 so that I could really have some visual interest coming through. All right, on the highlights slider, went with a negative 25. So some of those high tones, it definitely was pushing the limits here, and I needed to tone that down. Now the shadows as well, also negative 22. Now it's interesting too, some of these are actually fighting each other. The overall contrast at a 63, but then and that would take your shadows and push them down a little bit, and then it pushes it down even further. But on the highlights, that contrast of 63 is certainly pushing the highlights up. And then I'm telling it, whoa, hold on, Nancy, we got to come back down a little bit on those highlights. So I'm just using the contrast to push those highlights, to push those white values, to get those in the area that I want them to be in, because take a look at that whites slider, plus 15. What I'm doing there is I'm creating a little bit of extra contrast in those highlights and whites areas. I'm separating those out because that's what's going to give me the interest I'm looking for in those clouds. I'm thinking about the histogram here. So when I hover over the histogram, we can see that the whites slider takes care of approximately the top 10% brightness values of the overall image, and then that has that breaking point in that roughly 10% area. And then the highlights slider will take us from that roughly 10% area and go down to about the 30% brightness values, 30% down from the brightest value possible is what I'm saying. And so we have that region to think about. So I used the contrast overall, the major contrast slider, to make sure I pushed those values up to be within that region. But then I was like, look, I need a little further separation within those regions. So the whites values, I pushed them a little further up, and the highlights values, I toned them a little further back down. So I'm creating even more contrast just within that region. And that gives me the interest that I'm looking for to come through in those clouds. And then the blacks sliders, negative 45. So I'm really punching those. Some people use the term crushing the blacks, whatever we call it, those tonal values, I'm punching them down to make them really rich and really deep. And as we can see in the histogram representation here in Lightroom, I've got a yellow triangle on my little clipping. It says show. If I click it, it will show the clipping areas. When I hover over it, it does show it. But that's showing up as yellow. So what that means is I've got two colors. I've got my green and I've got my red channel, because when green and red come together in the RGB color space, they make yellow. And so the fact that that triangle is yellow, that means I've got a solid black in the green channel and a solid black in the red channel. And that's enough for me. I have just a tiniest amount on the extreme far lower left corner. You can see is a brightish kind of blue. When I take my mouse away from that little triangle, it goes away. And so that's the only thing that qualifies as a, quote, solid black. But the rest of it is really, really deep and really smushed down on those, as we'll call it, smushed on the histogram, as it were. Then on the texture, brought it up to a +15 and a clarity +40. I like the differences in how those two items behave. The texture slider virtually does nothing in the clouds, but it brings a little bit of that micro detail coming into the snow and the tundra areas. The clarity will emphasize some of those ridges on the mountains and also emphasizes the overall nature of how those tonal values come together in the clouds and things like that. Vibrance and saturation +40, +37 respectively. So I really wanted to bring in some punchiness. We talked about the contrast slider adding a lot of interest. And then of course this vibrance slider in the saturation slider, that's going to really bring some life to it too. So if I were to zero out all those items, this would be a really flat image. And I just knew we had something good there. It's about all these settings are about optimizing it and trying to make it happen for the optimization of the overall tones in the image, the overall colors. Now in the color mixer, this is the HSL sliders that I'm thinking about. And so on the saturation, I went with the orange and the yellow and boosted those a little bit. And then on the blue, I boosted that just a tiny amount as well. So you can see with my overall saturation, my overall vibrance, those weren't enough. I wanted to give a little extra attention to those yellows and those orange colors. And then the blue, I just brought those up to a minor degree. And then let's see, on the detail, just a little bit on the sharpening. These are the basic items that I have always going in on the sharpening. I bring my amount down to 25. This is an original default amount that Adobe has had for eons and eons. And then in the neighborhood of a year or two, maybe 3 ago, they boosted the default value to 40. I just find that to be a little rich. So I always tone that down as a default. That's just part of my import process. I don't even think about it. It's just done. Then the detail, bring it in at 50. That's about trying to counteract what that low pass filter does, the anti-aliasing filter. And so usually there's an extremely minimal amount of detail that comes back when I slide this up, but I do get a little bit of detail coming in sometimes, most of the time. So I do like to see that. I was thinking this was one of the images where I did a color grading actually, but I can see here I have no color grading applied. And so this whole notion of this extra blue and what's coming in here, it's all about this slider, this HSL slider with the blue, and then also this vibrance slider that tends to focus a little more of its attention on the cool tones, the blues and greens, a little bit more primary on the blue tones. Does that work? So with that coming in, that's where a lot of this blue hue is coming in. And I liked that idea again for the contrast of the color to balance out. That's another design principle, balance, to balance out those really rich, warm hues. On this idea of the lens correction, we've got remove chromatic aberrations and enable profile corrections. Again, this is one of those things. I just have this happen during the import process, but it's always going to be something I'm thinking about as I'm processing, especially on the profile corrections. Sometimes Adobe gets it wrong. As we've progressed throughout time, these have gotten more and more accurate, and I like what we have going on here. But occasionally there's still something where it corrects a little bit too much for the vignette, the natural vignette that's happening in the lens or just what have you. So it's always something in the back of my mind, but I don't usually have to worry about it. And then there were no other changes. So you can see there's no other, whether it's the vignetting or anything like that, in the regular processing area, that's it. Now we did have, it looks like we've got a little bit of a crop. So I took a little bit of the top of the image off so I could do an 11 by 17 crop. Now I did that specifically for my monthly print because my monthly print releases, it's all about an 11 by 17 size print on a 13 by 19 size paper. So it's got a 1-inch border, even border all the way around it, and it's very consistent that way. So that's why I cropped. I decided I'm just going to crop a little bit off the top there because I liked how the mountain was coming in. Let's now take a look at the masks and see what we have there, because there's definitely some masks which will help us understand some of these specific targeted nuanced changes that I've got going on. So I've got a left side gradient. So what I'm doing there is I'm decreasing the exposure by almost 1/4 of a stop. And so I just wanted to darken that a little bit. Without that being there, it was just a little bit too much competition for the main portion of the image. So I need to just tone it down, keep the eye flowing where I want it to flow, where I want it to look. All right, so this other one, foreground mountain snow. And what we have there is 2 items going on, a luminance range selection. Then it's brought into also a brush selection. So they overlap each other. They interact with each other. So the reason I did it this way was I wanted to grab just a targeted swath of the mountain, but I also only wanted to target just the snow. So this luminance range allows me to target just the highlights regions, and it forgets the shadow regions. But then that brush targets, all right, just this region over here in this portion of the image, not the entire image. And so that's what that's about. So with that adjustment, and when I have it hovered over here, you can see exactly where it's being applied. With that adjustment, I have a whites slider adjustment of +31, and that's the only thing. Oh, I have a temperature there of a +5, a temperature adjustment of +5. So that looks like it's the only thing going on with that. So when we go here to the next one, darken the darks is what I call it. This is kind of a almost a custom vignette because I can see a couple of things are going on here too. I have a brush and I have a luminance range. So again, the same idea that I did with the mountain snow, but I'm doing the exact opposite in the fact that I'm getting the darker values, and then I'm using the brush to limit it only to the lower portion of the frame. And so let's see what I'm doing here. With the darken the darks, this is purely just a blacks slider of -5. And then my final one, vignette radial. So while I didn't use the standard processing area way at the bottom, where we have the effects element, and then we can do a post-crop vignette in there, I used the radial mask to do a radial gradient, and then I inverted it, and then I did almost 1/3 of a stop exposure on the negative side. And then looky here, this is where we have a -5 set to the temperature. That brings in more blue tonal values to this vignette area. So I'm influencing it a little more strongly in the blue. And then I'm taking a -2 on the tint, which brings in a slight amount of green as well. So we're enhancing those cool tones in the outer region of the image. And that is the extent of the masks that we're using on that. And now it is time to make a print. Like I said, this is my December release for 2023. And it's a fantastic way to get a print for your home or office. And these are 13 by 19 sized prints, and they are all going to be the same size. So if you were to get a collection of the prints, you're able to have, if you wanted to swap it out every month, you could buy a 13 by 19 frame, and then you just swap it out with the new one that comes out, and you'd be able to have that rotating through. Or of course, just get more 13 by 19 frames and populate your room with it, populate your office with it, whatever the case is. But let's take a look. We're going to do printing in Lightroom. And to do that, we head on over here to the print module. And so this print module is pretty slick. I do already have it set up, but we want to set up down here in the lower right-hand corner. We use this page setup button. We want to make sure, number one, we're going to select the proper printer. When you do that, it gives you the native paper sizes that this printer supports. Now, it does support custom size papers, but I like to go with the ones that it just natively supports. It just makes our life a little bit easier, really. So we've got the A3 Plus, which is a 13 by 19 size. And then it could potentially get a little bit confusing. We have this other button here for print settings. And then when we come down over here, let's change this item. So we are in our print 2. We're over on the far right-hand side. We're going to change it to printer. These two buttons change now. And so this printer button down over here is basically going to be the same kind of idea as this print settings on the left-hand side. It looks drastically similar. So I've clicked on the print settings button and it looks drastically similar to the print dialog box. This is where you're going to set things like in your printer options, you're going to come out here with your quality and media and things like that. So if I do that and I come over here to printer, it's the exact same thing. Why does Adobe do this? I have no idea. With the exception of, let's take a look, because here we have a print button. Under the print settings button on the left-hand side, when I click that, I have a save button. I do not have a print button. So that is the only difference that you have, because you can set up your items here that you're going to set up, but then you just save it. Now the convenience there is if you know you've got them set up right. So let's go ahead and do this basically. So I'm going to come here to my printer options. I'm going to go to quality and media, photo paper plus semi-gloss. I know this is what I want because I'm printing on the Canson Infinity Barreto Photographique. And this is a little bit of an older paper. They now have a version 2 of this paper, but I still have a few sheets of the version 1. So I'm going to go ahead and move through these and then we'll start using version 2. But anywho, these items, so we want the media type, and then I want the print quality set to high, and then I'm going to hit OK, and then I hit save here, and then once I get all these other parameters set, I can just hit this print button. I don't need to go through all that process again. I am in such a habit, though, that I usually hit this printer button, and I avoid hitting this print settings button. I just hit this printer button usually is how I usually do my workflow. So it just depends on how much confidence you have. Did you get it set up right? And did anything change? I'm of the school of thought, this paper is like what, $4 or more just for the sheet of paper? I am interested in not wasting that. So I always like to double check my settings. But let's go through here really quickly and just see the setup of the print module item. So we've got a margin here of 1 inch all the way around. That gives us basically an 11 by 17 cell size, which is the print size. So it comes in at 10.95 inches by 17.02 inches. I'm like close enough, whatever. I could hit this zoom to fit, which should then completely fill the cell, where if I didn't do that, it's going to limit it to the crop that I have set in the develop module. Well, now I hit zoom to fit, it's actually going to totally fill this exact size here. If I didn't like that, if I wanted to make this completely 11, and see, it's not going to like that. It's only going to allow me up to 10.95. There's certain whatevers. That's fine. I will live with it because of these margin settings. It's close enough, and I'm not going to worry too much about it. Being 0.05 of an inch off, I don't think we're going to notice that when it's on the wall. All right. So all these other items, the identity plate, et cetera, I just get rid of those. All I want is the image, just like we see it here, the image centered on the page, and it's ready to go. So we're going to do our print resolution at 240 is a fine size for that. Our print sharpening, standard matte. I only have matte and glossy. This is a semi-gloss type paper, a luster type paper. So I just would prefer to do the matte on this type of item. This is the kind of thing where I have accepted the idea that this is really convenient and really simple, and I'm getting a really quality print out of this. but it's always a little bit, I wish I had some very specific numbers here that I could dial in like I can do when I'm in Photoshop. But when I do that, there's a whole lot more work that goes into it. And I'm just interested in being able to have this come out fairly conveniently is probably the best way to put it. All right, then on the color management, I really want to make sure that I choose the proper ICC profile. And so I've got the Barita photographic for my Pixel Pro 10. And so that's already selected. And then on the overall intent, the rendering intent, preserves color accuracy for the relative. I like this one usually. If any colors are out of gamut, it just chops them off and forces them to the nearest in-gamut solution. This is such a wide gamut printer that it can do more colors than what my screen can do. So I'm going to trust it. And the fact that Lightroom is in Pro Photo Color Space, that there is an opportunity for it to have some colors that the printer cannot render, but that just doesn't usually happen. And I couldn't see it on my screen anyway because my screen is about sRGB. So I've decided I'm not going to really worry about those things as it relates to complete 100% accuracy as it relates to what I see on screen. I'm just not terribly concerned. Now, it should be very, very similar. And by choosing relative, I guarantee those similarities. If I choose perceptual, it says it preserves out of gamut detail, but colors may change. It may change in gamut colors. And so that's when I might actually see some differences. And if I compare the print to the screen and I see differences in colors, well, first thing I'm going to is, did I select perceptual as my rendering intent? If I did, that's probably why I'm seeing color changes. Now, of course, for you out there, with what you're looking at and what you're creating on your own machine, there's a lot of things that are involved here. This is not a full lesson in color management. What I'm just trying to say is I've got my system dialed in. I know where my weak points are. And so relative tends to give me a better result because I have the accuracy of color coming through. And if I have those colors that are out of gamut, it's usually so tiny amounts of those colors that are out of gamut on the printer that I don't have any problems. The color is so spot on. I just don't have any problems like that. But when I choose perceptual, I'm inviting the opportunity for these color shifts to happen. And then I get all bent out of shape because now it doesn't match my screen. Is my screen not calibrated? Blah, 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 whatever. Well, I know my screen is calibrated. I know I've dialed this in. I've got everything really honed in. And relative helps me keep those expectations and for a color and helps me deliver on those expectations. All right, so we should be good to go. I'm just going to go ahead and hit this printer button once again, and then I will hit print down here when I'm ready to go. So I've got the Canon. I don't need to worry so much about paper handling so much. I'm just going to go down here. Color matching, I definitely want to make sure this is grayed out because that means that Lightroom is taking care of all of the color matching stuffs, and that's good. When I go to quality media, it is what we already set it to be, and that's good. And then my color options here, there's some adjustments manually otherwise that we can do, but of course, these are not allowed to happen because of Lightroom making its own color decisions. And so that's good. And I'm not going to worry about all the others because it's not a borderless print. Don't need to worry about the margin. Don't need to worry about the clear coating. It's all good. It's good to go. So now I just hit print and then we'll wait for a few minutes and this thing will be done. It'll be printed. And wouldn't you know it, it's telling me it's out of Photo Magenta. So I need to find my Photo Magenta ink cartridge replacement and get that going for it. So I've got my little thing here. I need to find another one, another Photo Magenta. And I can also see that the red is blinking at me. So I'm going to grab a red and stick it in there and then find another Photo Magenta and then we'll be in business. one thing I tell my students at the university is when you operate a printer like this, well, what is that? How do I say it? In order to be successful at operating a printer like this, you need to have something in common with a good doctor. What is that? You have to have a lot of patience. All right, bad dad jokes over for the day. While that's printing, I thought I might just tell you a little bit about these monthly edition collectibles. And I should say while that's preparing to print, because it's still not printing. But anyway, so every month I release these items, and I'm just on the website here. I'll include this link in the show notes in your video description there. So just go to my website, click on the galleries item, go to the monthly edition collectibles, and you'll be at the same spot. Now, these also come out as you get this, everything we've talked about here, you get in an email as well if you sign up for the email. I talk about the design aspects of the image just like I did here, and we talk about the story behind it, and of course you got links to the image and all that other good stuff too. But if you'd like to learn more just over out what has happened in the past with all of these, but also just with what these are about to begin with, then we just have all these down here. This one is going to be the 6th one. I started these in July. And so here for December, this is image number 6 of the whole overall edition. And it looks like I am out of another color. It didn't tell me this before. Ink taint replacement. Oh my goodness. Oh wait. It just wants me to hit the resume button, I think, which I have now done. And now I think it's finally printing. We'll see. Okay, back to these items. So we can see here we've got the November, so on and so forth. And the description then, each print is crafted with great care. And I tell you all about just what to expect with all of these things. The nature of how they're printed, how they're shipped to you, and everything along those lines. Of course, we have the add to cart item here. If you were to click on a particular image, you'd be able to see and read a little bit about that specific image and whatnot. These items for this size, they are limited edition. So they're limited to 50 units. So when we're looking at releasing another one, all right, so for this image, once those 50 units are sold, I'm never going to sell this size again. I am limiting my definition of limited edition to this size and this format, this delivery of these items. So if I were to do something on canvas or whatever, that's a different edition. But when it comes to these collectibles, when it comes to these really convenient prints to swap things out and to make it easy to collect, then that's what we're going for. We have the 50 limited here for all of these items. But that price, it includes all the shipping for the lower 48 anyway. It includes a certificate of authenticity, and it includes a really nice packaging to keep those really solid and really protected when you are going to receive those in the mail. And then, of course, you'll just open it up and be able to display it in your home or office and enjoy the beauty, in this case, of the one I'm showing, radiant allium, the beauty of the color, the beauty of the nature of this particular piece. So that is, I guess, in a nutshell, a little bit of what these prints are all about. And the printer has finally started printing, so it will be out shortly. It looks like to me I probably should have cleaned the printer before I went and did this. I'm seeing some items, so we're going to push through this and get this thing figured out. So let's take a look at what I was talking about. It might have started to clear itself out. So here we can see in this part of the image, it's looking pretty good. And I'm noticing some stuff that's happening down in this portion down here in the lower left-hand side. We just got some really weird stuff going on there. And I don't like when I see that. But what's going on here, I can tell that it looks like we have the black channel is clogged, but then it brought itself back to life as we got into here. So when I do the cleaning process, I have that up now on screen. When I do this cleaning process, we're going to go over here to utility. I'm going to hit open printer utility, And I'm going to want to first do a test print, and we're going to do a nozzle check. And of course, it'll take a few seconds to do that. And when we see the results of this, we'll then know, are we getting a good result here? Gonna get a good result on the paper. But yes, with that, boy, howdy, I definitely should have done that. It's been a couple of weeks since I've printed, and so sometimes it will have some clogged nozzles when it sits for a little while. And yeah, it's probably just a good practice that we should check those things. If your printer has been sitting for a little while, then it definitely behooves you to go ahead and check it and make sure that you're not going to run into problems like this. But I like to leave these problems in the video. I could totally have edited this out and saved you about 10, 20 minutes worth of content, but then you wouldn't understand, you wouldn't see the struggle and understand what goes on and how these things can crop up. And it's not always, roses and unicorns when it comes to printing here in my studio. There's definitely some problems that happens, and we just need to learn how to work through them, overcome them, and push through with it, of course. All right, so this is looking normal as I have the item here. Everything here. So we've got on this channel number 2, we've got the gray, the photo black, the cyan, the chroma optimizer, and the matte black. All of those look completely normal. And then on this first channel, we've got the cyan, yellow, magenta, photo magenta, and red. I got them out of order there, but anyway, those look all normal. So as I said here, when we got to this portion of the image, it had cleared itself out. But this portion of the image, we definitely had some problems. I suspect it was my black channel. So I need to load up now another sheet of paper. I'm going to go ahead and quit this. I don't need to clean anything more. I can just totally cancel out of all of this. Let's get back to Lightroom. And now let's load up another sheet of paper and get this going again. All right, all those settings should be good. I haven't done a blame thing in Lightroom, so I'm going to hit just the print button and get that thing going. Sometimes it is a little bit confusing. What side is the print side? If you're not paying attention when you pull it out of the box, then it could, sometimes it's a little bit confusing. On this particular paper, there's a little bit of a sheen that comes through on the print side, and so I had to double check for that and make sure I've got it loaded properly. But now, okay, let's probably wait another 4 minutes or so, and then finally this thing will be printed and ready to enjoy. It is done, and it is gorgeous. Loving it. When those ink jets are not clogged, you can get really good results. That is for sure. Oh, that's beautiful. I absolutely love it. Oh, man. I just get giddy when I get a good print. I love it. And an even better, well, is it even possible to say, another print that I did of this exact same photo on metal is also available on YouTube now. So take a look on my channel and you'll be able to see this metal print that I did just recently, and it is of this exact same photo and it looks identical. That's a beautiful thing about color calibration and controlling your color and getting things done right. Anywho, it's about 16 by 24 inches. I honestly can't remember the exact size of that metal print, but I'm so spoiled that I have the opportunity to teach all this stuff to my students at the university. And of course, then share it, bring it here and share it with you. It's just amazing. Oh man. So who's going to get this first print? This is number 1 of this print, 1 of 50. Who's going to get it? So anyway, it's there, it's available and ready for Christmas, ready for whatever. Anyway, let's get on with it here. I did have a couple of questions about my online course. So my previous episode, I talked about my online course, Designing Creativity in Photography, and how we take you through just so many good things on this whole notion of helping you understand who you are as a photographer and what your goals are, what your purpose is. And even if you're really solid in that, I had a couple of people post in the Facebook group some really solid, good items that helps them communicate and understand who they are, but communicate that to others about who they are and what they do with their photography and the why that they do things with their photography. That is beautiful. I always encourage, if it's been a while that you haven't looked at those purposes yet and looked at those types of things, I always love those types of self-assessments to where you're always going to keep yourself on track. But I had some specific questions. A fellow reached out and asked, are the live sessions that are offered there? So we're going to do 6 regular live sessions starting in February, 2 a month. And are those live sessions one-on-one or are they in a group setting? Well, these are in a group setting, but let me give you a little bit of a clarification on that. While they're in a group setting, I am limiting those groups to a certain size. So if we have 10 people, it's all going to be in one group. If we have an 11th person sign up, we'll be splitting things out. So I'm going to then offer 2 sessions. So please come on in. Every 10 people, or, when we go past that 10th amount. So if we were to get 21 people, if we were to get 31 people, whatever the case is, when we cross that next threshold, then we're going to split out and do another group session so that we're able to keep the group sessions small and manageable. When we get more than about 10 or so, if I'm in person, I can handle a larger group. But if it's online, 8 to 10 is really a good size for a maximum size. We'll do it via Zoom. So you will need the Zoom app on your computer, or maybe you want to do it on your tablet or your phone or what have you. But we will need the Zoom, and then they are group sessions. There's an additional bonus session that's going to be happening because I'm going to be printing some of your photos through this design and creativity and photography experience. So with that bonus session, we're going to be talking about, once you receive those images, what it's all about. You're going to be I want your feedback on your experience. And then, of course, we can all learn from it when we hear that feedback. It's going to be amazing. All right, how many hours of video lessons are included in the overall course? Right now, it's in the neighborhood of 6.5 to 7 hours. I still have a couple of lessons that I need to record, and so it's going to easily take it up into the neighborhood of about 8 hours. I haven't done an exact accounting to know exactly how many hours of video lessons are there, but that's roughly going to be what it's about. And then the question, are there assignments? So yes, there are assignments in some of the modules, some of the lessons, I should say. Well, modules, whatever. There are going to be some assignments, but also when we have those live sessions, I'm going to be telling you, okay, we're going to be talking about this, we're going to be talking about that, or this series of lessons or whatever. And then I'm also going to be giving you a specific to-do list or specific items, action items that we want to see happen. Usually you're going to be able to reference your library of images, but maybe you want to use this as a springboard to get out there and shoot more images. That's really what I want to see you do for these prints, though. But that's really, this is just me saying this is what I would encourage you to do. Is the requirement? No, of course not. There's no way I can enforce that, but it's about the growth, and I want you to see your growth after going through these lessons and taking these ideals into mind. I want you to see you grow. That's probably the way I need to put it, because you are going to grow and you are going to have new insight. And as you revisit these items, because you will have access to the course material for a good long time and the live sessions as well. So, I call it lifetime. I have a thing on my website that defines what lifetime means. It doesn't literally mean until you die or until I die. But anyway, you have the lifetime access to the website and the course material. So you'd be able to review it and continue the growth process in that. So are there assignments? Yes. In a nutshell, there are assignments, but because this is a special thing as well, where we have the live sessions coupled with it, we have the prints coupled with it, there's even more types of items that you could consider to be assignments. Now, another thing I also tossed out to this fellow, that I am considering doing this as it's going to be about a 5 to 6 day intensive, where we cover everything in a short period of time in person. And if that's something that interests you, certainly reach out to me and let me know. Not everybody can do that. I mean, right now in this season, I can't do that. But when summer comes, hey, I'm a teacher. I have summers off. So it is possible we could do it as a summer session and have almost a week. Again, it'd be about 5 days to 6 days possibly, where we would focus on everything designing, creativity, and photography related. And of course, end with some prints. That would be the goal anyway. Depends on where we do it, whether or not I can bring my printer. If I can drive there, then you bet I'll be able to bring my printer. But if I have to fly somewhere, I am leaving the printer home. That's all there is to it. Maybe I could coordinate with someone who has a printer. Yeah, that could be interesting. Anyway, coordinate on site somewhere with someone or a print house or whatever the case is. Anyway, I have 2 special Christmas gifts that I want to get out there. The first one is related to this online course. So I just answered some of those additional questions about the online course, and I want to extend this notion, extend this information out there. So I previously have announced that we've got 6 of your photographs that I print for you. So after you go through the lessons, whether again it's from your back catalog of images, whether it's new images that you're shooting, what you're going to probably do with your back catalog, you're going to be able to reprocess some of those items, and you're going to be able to understand, oh, I see this image in a new light with these things that I've learned, and that might inform how I might do post-processing. And so you might to consider reprocessing the image, and that would be amazing. I would love to be able to see you do that. Or you go out and shoot a new image. Perfect. Let's get you some 6 images, and let's get those in your hands so you can look at them and study them and put them on your wall and share them with your family and friends. That would be amazing. So 6 photographs that I'm going to print for you of your photographs. But if you sign up by December 26th, again, this is the thing I'm trying to get across here, that I'm basing it on the idea of it's a Christmas gift. So let's get you a few extras as a gift. No longer are we going to do 6 images. If you sign up by December 26th, you're going to get 10. That's a lot of images to put on your wall. That's probably too many, but I'm just throwing it out there for you anyway. That is my gift to you. I literally came up with this. This isn't some grand scheme that I've been hatching and I'm just unveiling it now. No, I literally came up with this like 2 days ago, and I'm just thrilled to be able to offer it to everybody. So if you sign up, though, this is what's related to the course. Now, I have another gift I'm going to be talking about that is not related to the course. I will get to that in a second, but 10 of your images. Now, you might be thinking, I don't have 10 images that I want to get printed. I bet you do. And the beautiful thing about some of our time that we're going to be doing, some of the assignments that you're going to have to do, is determining what images might you think about printing. And then we'll be able to talk about them in the group setting, and we'll be able to go through them, and we'll be able to help you understand this would make a good print because that would make a good, think about doing it this way when you're thinking about printing and things like that. And we're going to be really able to just have, oh my goodness, some awesome prints of yours coming through. I'm just getting so excited and about doing this with you. And it's going to be amazing to put these prints in your hands. I love it. And I know you will too. So 10 prints, but it's only for those who sign up by December 26th. So that's 4 additional photographs than what is mentioned on the site. Now, I'm going to leave it here to just you guys here on the YouTube video and you in audio only land. We're going to just leave it here. I'm not planning on, currently anyway, I'm not planning on making anything of a splash on the website. I want it to be for my listeners, those of you and my viewers, those of you who are here watching and learning and listening, and you're going to be the ones. It's just going to be automatic, and you're going to get these things. Now, those who just trip across it and whatever else, and they sign up, well, they're going to get the benefit too, but this is special for you guys. So here you go. That's awesome. So treat yourself to some awesome growth for your photography in 2024. Maybe this is a Christmas gift to yourself. I don't know how you're going to think about it on your side of things, but yes, this could be a Christmas gift to yourself possibly. But then these 4 additional prints, so you can have 10 total photographs. Woohoo! That is good stuff. All right, now this next one is open to everyone. Sort of, asterisk. Maybe I should put that in there. No purchase necessary. This is a completely separate deal. As Dave Ramsey says, to be unclear is to be unkind. All right, as I say, I don't like being unkind. So I want to be extra clear. We are completely shifting gears. This has nothing to do with the course experience. This has everything to do with you. Just because you're a listener, just because you're watching, just because you're a photographer, and the criteria is very simple. What is it? What are we talking about? All right, I'm going to do a 13 by 19 print competition. So here's what we're looking at. I want you to submit a low-res image, about 1,500 pixels on the long edge to do it, but submit it by December 20. Now, how you submit it is you go onto the website. Now, you are going to need this special link. So my website, so my name, brentbergherm.com/Christmas Print Competition 2024. And between each word is a hyphen. So Christmas-print-competition-2024. Now, of course, your link is going to be there in the show notes or the description, the video description, and you're going to be able to just click on that item for yourself and be able to get there to the specific page. That specific page has the form that you need to upload the images. So I've got a form there that you can use to just go ahead and upload the images. In fact, let's go ahead and we'll finish this, then we'll go through that page. So again, 1,500 pics on the long edge should be good enough for our judging of what we want to do here. I'll post these images to the Facebook group on or about December 21, but voting will only happen through my email list. So if you're on my email subscribers list, you are the people who get to vote. And so I will send the images and the voting method to all the email subscribers on or about December 21. All right. And then voting will happen through December 31st. And then the winner will be announced in the January 1 episode. Or if I get a delay or something like that, it'll be the first episode in January. And then you as a winner, if you happen to be the winner, you must submit your print ready file by January 8 in order to qualify. So it's open to listeners. That's the asterisk I mentioned. Open to listeners in the lower 48. Only those on my email list can cast a vote. So use the link that's on the page, or also you find in your show notes, what have you. So you can cast your vote. Prints will be on archival, just like this, the archival paper, by either Kansas Infinity or Breathing Color. And then I will ship the winning photo to you for the one person who wins. I'm going to ship the photo to you when you give me your address. So when you submit that image, you're going to be able to then, of course, give me your mailing address, and I'll just ship it to you. So let's take a look at the website now. This one page, this Christmas Print Competition 2024 page, and it says use the form below to submit your image for the print giveaway. So as you scroll down, you can see this image submission form item. We'll get to that in a moment. This first form, the one that is up towards the top in this main image area, it says first name, email, and then it says sign me up so I can vote. This will put you on my regular email list. And again, the vote instructions and all that stuff is only going to go to those on this email list. Now, this email list, you're also going to get the items for these print releases and all the information there. You'll get information about the designing creativity and photography course when I have things coming out about that and such and so forth. So you will be getting these other types of things, but as it relates to what's happening here in December is specific to this item here. I'd love to have you sign up and be a part of the voting process. So as we scroll down, we're going to be able to see image submission form. Use this form. You just fill in your name, your email, provide a description. So it says include the title of the work or any other pertinent information. Really what I'm interested in is your title. And if it's untitled, then you can just call it untitled. That's fine. What I'm wanting to do, though, is make this rather anonymous. So when I make the voting, the images available, I'm not going to put your name with it. I'm only going to put the image there. So if you don't title it, I will probably give it some kind of title myself. Like if it's if you were to have submitted this image, I'm ineligible. Let's say I submitted this image, this gazebo image, but you called it untitled. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say winter gazebo or something like that, something to give it some kind of description for what it is. And that's how I'm going to reference it through the rest of the communication when we do the voting and stuff like that. So that's what I mean by I'll assign some type of title. All right, so you have your file upload here. It's limited to 10 megabytes. Only JPEGs are allowed. Now, 10 megabytes, that's extremely generous when it comes to a JPEG, especially if you downsize it to about 1,500 pixels on the long end. All right, so it says choose file. You click that, you upload your file, you hit transmit files, everything's good. It's going to happen. It'll upload it to me, and I'll be able to grab it and put all my materials together so I can communicate with everybody with what this is all about and all these things. So please be sure the file extension, that's the .jpg, it appears in the file name. The system will reject it otherwise. And don't upload anything that includes private information. I mean, I'm only allowing JPEGs to come in on this form. You go ahead, try your PDF, try your DOCX, try your EXE, whatever it will reject it. So don't worry about that. What I'm just saying is don't upload a JPEG that has some kind of important information, the metadata or something like that. I don't want to put you at risk for anything along those lines. One thing too, though, this form is not considered, quote, secure in that the image file remains unencrypted through this process. So anyway, I just need to make sure you're aware of that. So let's read through these contest rules really quick because there's a few more items here than what I've talked about previously. Open to all listeners in the lower 48. It is going to be considered void in any state or jurisdiction where such contest is deemed illegal, and you must be 18 years or older to enter. You must own the full copyright of the photograph that you submit. It is limited to one photograph per person, and no generative AI content is allowed. I want to be really clear on this idea. If you're going to use the denoise function or whatever they call it in Lightroom, they claim that uses artificial intelligence to remove noise or the upres or whatever it is you're doing in those types of things. I don't view that as generative AI. I'm talking about generative AI is something like where you're in Photoshop and you say, give me a this or give me a that or whatever the case is. Or even I might even go so far as to say generative fill. That would be the same type of item. I'm looking for you to have an image that you have created largely, shall we call it, in camera. Of course you can crop. Of course you can do these processings that you have in Lightroom. But it's when you get into Photoshop or other image editors that are adding things to the image that didn't exist in originally, that's the type of thing where I'm saying, let's steer clear of that. Let's not do that. The genre must be related to the great outdoors. This includes, but is not limited to, street photography, nature, landscape, and wildlife photography, and other types of outdoor photography. Anything related to the great outdoors is good. I will be the sole judge who determines eligibility of photographs. So if you submit a photograph and then you suddenly see it's not a part of the submissions that get voted upon, well, it's because I deemed it ineligible for some reason. It might be such as the genre was off. Maybe you submitted a nude image of someone in a waterfall or something like that. All right, well, you got the outdoors part, but I'm not going to be putting a nude image out there, a nude model or some such out there. So, maybe there's some other technical reason why it got disqualified. Whatever the case is, I reserve the judgment to disqualify images for whichever reason I deem that it needs to be disqualified for. However, I will not be voting at all. I have no say in the overall vote. That's for you. as a member of my email insider list. That's for you guys to vote on. All right, so your submission must be made by December 20, 2023. There is no purchase necessary. Again, this is completely separate from that notion, from that idea of the online course. Anything else that I sell, making any purchase has zero bearing on the odds of winning. The odds of winning is completely up to the voting people on the email who decide themselves that they will be a part of the voting effort. Winning is completely up to them, and I have no vote or zero vote on or decision on who wins the contest. Now, I suppose you could say, well, if you're going to disqualify my image, that means you have a vote. Well, of course that does. But when it comes to those who qualify, it's all about the voters then. Voting will happen through December 31. So it's 11 days. That'll be fine. The winner will be announced in the January 1 episode. That's of this podcast. And it will, or the first episode of the new year, basically, if I happen to be delayed a bit. Now, I don't return to the classroom until January 8. So I should have plenty of time, it should just go fine. But let's face it, things happen. I'm just giving myself an out there. All right, voting is only open to those on the email list, and the form to sign up is at the top of this page. The prize, of course, just being clear here in these rules here, a 13 by 19 inch fine art photograph. You get to decide, do you want to make it borderless? Do you want to make it 11 by 17 like I do with my images? Do you want to have more of a border? That's up to you. You get to decide what you want to do with your print. A print-ready high-resolution photograph will need to be made available by January 8, 2024 to qualify. So be attentive. And I will, of course, email you should you be the winner. But be attentive and make sure you're able to get me that high-res file so that I can get your print going. If you have any questions, of course, please contact me. I would be happy to help with that. So that is the info on the Christmas Print Competition 2024. Find the link in your show notes, find the link in the video description, find the link there, and you'll be able to see this page, upload that image, and then we'll go from there. And it's going to be just a fantastic experience. I think it'll be a lot of fun anyway. And then I'm going to get you a print on this machine, as you just saw or heard or whatever you want to call it. Just fine stuff coming through. And it's just going to be really exciting to get that in your hands. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and you'll have a print for yourself to enjoy. Okay, let us wrap this up now. I always like to end, well, I didn't in the last episode. I kind of was kicking myself for that. But I always like to end with a dose of inspiration. And so we have the wisdom of King Solomon coming to us. Proverbs 27, verse 19. As a face is reflected in water, so a heart reflects the real person. I always like it when I see something like this, that I can also then kind of sort of translate or transform into the notion of how it informs or affects our photography as well. As a face is reflected in water, so the heart also is made evident through the images you make. That's kind of, reflects the real person. The real person is informing, is affecting, is causing something to come through in the image you make. I guarantee you that fellow that was with me, Randy, he did not make a shot like this. Now, well, okay, he may have made a shot like this, but he did not make this exact shot. He made his own shot. He had his own interpretation on the scene. I have my own interpretation on the scene, and you have your own interpretation on the scene. Whatever scene you have before you, you have your own interpretation. Now, is it good to mimic others? Certainly, as you're learning especially, it can be extremely valuable to mimic and be inspired heavily by other photographers, other creatives, other artists. But the true value really comes when the real person is reflected through your photography. That is when it's just firing on all cylinders. It's really exciting, good stuff. I just love it. Okay, one of our previous Supreme Court justices, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., he has a thing here. A mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. How true it is. About half of the reason I love to get out there and shoot in the great outdoors is for the experience. I am huge on understanding or placing value on the experience of whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're getting yourself involved in. The experience is something that transforms you. The experience is something that changes you. As he says here, you never go back to your old dimensions, and it is transformational. And because of that, to me, that's where I place a lot of value in this whole experience of photography. It's awesome to make an image like this. And you saw me even just now, I'm getting a little bit giddy again, just looking at it. I'm just like, this is so amazing. I just love it. There's just something so satisfying about it. I can't, I put it into words, but it's still, it feels inadequate to put it into words because I'll never go back to those old dimensions. I'll never go back to the time before my experience there on Unalaska Island. And I'm better for it. I am better because of it. I'm a better photographer. I'm a better person. I'm a better husband, better father, better creative, better artist, better everything because of that experience. And I think that's valuable for you to be thinking about too. When you have an experience, you're better because of it. And that's definitely very exciting. All right, well, that wraps it up for us. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got questions, please do reach out. Brent at thegreatoutdoorsphotographypodcast.com is where you can find me on the email. Of course, look me up on the Facebook group or what have you, or my Facebook page, Brent Bergen Photography. You can message me there, whatever the case is, however you would like to reach me. I'm available for you if you have questions about any of these things we've covered today. If you have questions about the course, you have questions about the print things, the monthly print options, you have questions about the print process itself and things like that. I just wish to be able to, at least if I can't give you the answer, I'm going to help you, guide you in the right direction. But, hopefully I can get you the right answer as well, though. But anyway, again, thanks for being here. I really love it. Please do consider sharing this with a friend, whether you're on the YouTube and you just want to hit that share button and put it on your social media, put it on on an email to somebody. Maybe you're in the podcast and you're just like, you know what? So-and-so would really like this. Text them a link to it. That would be amazing. I would love for your help because basically, if you will, my marketing budget is you. And when you enjoy something, when you get value out of something and you share that with someone else, they will then grow because of it. They will then be inspired, hopefully, because of it. And in part because of what you have brought them to, because they respect you, of course. And so they're going to then view this in the light of saying, hey, my friend forwarded this to me. That's important. So I just invite you to do that with at least one friend here this week. And that'll be it then. So again, thanks so much. Love doing this. Love having you here. Until next time, God bless and happy shooting.